Does it ever feel like complex trauma, childhood trauma, has become your entire personality? You know, the adaptations, the things we worry about, the hypervigilance, the self-assessments, the chronic worrying about everything and anything. I've noticed that for many of us, this joke of trauma is my personality, it's kind of true. For so many of us, we've just always been this way. I've always had anxiety. I've never known what it's like not to. Even times when I'm in the kitchen by myself, I'm not even doing anything. It's just there. Why is it there? Let's talk about it. Hi, I am Dr. Kim Sage. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is really how we can take the adaptations and responses of childhood from our complex trauma type childhood, so relational type patterns, and really have these adaptations become our personality. And so what we're really talking about is attachment when we're born, our parents' attachment style, and their nervous system and our body meeting and responding to their attachment patterns and their nervous system responses, and that often becoming in certain childhoods, especially really unpredictable eggshell type childhoods, where you basically have to live in fight or flight. And so you become hypervigilant at all times, kind of scanning. And two other main things are going on, or three really. One is you often carry toxic shame for who you are. That's that deep belief that there's something wrong with you, that you are unlovable. The next thing is that you often have this belief system that everything is about you as a result of needing to always scan and make sure that you're okay. And so you overinterpret, overanalyze. It always comes back to something about you. And alongside that, really having this very extreme need to be extra sensitive because of that scanning, that hypervigilance, that things like sounds and chewing and noises and dogs barking and people are always a potential threat to you, to your nervous system, and to your relationships. So you have this kind of stew I've talked about where it's like a hypervigilant pot, and that is the center. And then everything else in it really is about overanalyzing, overinterpreting, being really sensitive to the world around you and feeling like it's always about you and needing to always make meaning of that because the brain needs a story. And so the problem is if we're always scanning up here, we think everything is our fault and we're unlovable, and everything that happens in the world is literally stressing out our nervous system and or done to hurt us because we're so sensitive. And then we have to make meaning about it. It makes us feel like we are in this panic state of never being good enough, of everyone being mad at us, of something being wrong with us all of the time. And so a few more things I think we can see if we have this sort of PTSD type dynamic becomes our personality is that we can have a lot of emotional flashbacks, which is very common. And so that gets flooded, right? A sense of, let's say, shame, fragility, fear of abandonment, anger, rage, sadness. And remember, an emotional flashback is not like necessarily a visual flashback. It's a wash of feelings, a regressed state in childhood back to that feeling state in childhood. And so I've talked, for example, about the end of the day sometimes being, for some reason, I can be very calm and then start to make dinner, even just for myself, and feel really anxious. And when my kids were little, that made sense, right? The end of the day is the hardest part of the day. But now it's like, well, that's not what's happening right now. Back then I was probably stressed about feeding everybody and, dealing with bath time and bedtime and homework and books. But I think not only did that happen, but I think that my childhood with my mom, for example, working late and me being a latchkey kid at 5, never thinking she was coming home, eating dinners alone. I don't really know, but I feel like sometimes that anxiety is super historical. It's not even about what's happening today. Now, it could also be that I'm stressed about something today, but you can see what I'm saying is that it kind of just hits you out of nowhere. Or you just feel like really sad all of a sudden, right? And it can be triggered by things like movies and shows and memories and places, but that's what's happening. The next thing is we often feel, I think, when we have this kind of PTSD personality belief is that there's something different about us. We're often a little detached and we just feel like we just can't quite always match with others. There's something there. And I've talked a lot about the difference between what a parent says and what they do not matching. And so we learn to tolerate that. But there's oftentimes this wall between us and others at some point because we just don't fully trust most other people. We might trust our kids or, trust our partners or best friends, but even some of those can be tricky if you've had childhood trauma. Or being extremely critical, that's that classic inner and outer critic where you just are always have this like narrative, this tape in your head is just constantly assessing and judging and thinking about yourself and others and making meaning, and it can be very depleting and very hard to turn that narrative off. And so you just think that you're just a judgmental person, right? Or you're super critical. But really, that developed out of needing to be very aware of what was going on and the little nuances, the breathing, the sighs, that I've discussed, the tires in the driveway, whatever it is, to then decide what you needed to do to protect yourself. The next couple things are being truly drained socially, even if we're introverts or extroverts, that there's something about being with a lot of other people that is just especially overwhelming to our bodies and nervous systems. And that's because if you're operating in that high level, right, everything is going to be kind of grating on your nervous system really easily. And then things like forgetfulness, dissociation, having a hard time being present, could also be maladaptive daydreaming where your mind just goes other places and you're creating new worlds or new lives or stories or thinking about your future self. And we can learn to just live in that. And so we're never in the present. And the last thing is on my list, but it really is this idea I already mentioned, which is that at the core, all of this goes back to that need to respond to caregivers who were unpredictable potentially, and you being deeply flawed, something wrong with you, right? That you are deeply unlovable, unworthy. And so if all of that is happening, it can really feel like that is who you are. And in a sense, it is who you are because you had to make those adaptations to survive. They have become part of your personality. But I think it's important to start to challenge those at times. Like, okay, I know I'm being highly critical and yeah, I did that in childhood and I can have some compassion, but that really puts me in a negative headspace. I want to work on that, right? Looking at your thoughts, your analyzing behaviors, challenging your overinterpretations. Everything is not always about you, even though it kind of was, it had to be, and in some sense it is about us because we're the only person we have in our own bodies. But if you have that belief system, right, it's like everything can come back to it being, you not being good enough or not likable or everyone mad at you, things like that. You definitely want to look at working on your body, things like, cardio exercise, every morning walking or every day, guided meditations. The thing is, not just the attachment behaviors your parent had that you learned to respond to or not, the cues or the neglect or whatever, but how your body responded to that. And that is a huge one because like I was giving the example of the anxiety in the kitchen, I can acknowledge that and feel that and try to think my way through it, but that doesn't usually work. I have to slow down, do some breathing, ideally some longer exhales than inhales to really get that vagal tone increasing, to get that nervous system calming. I might go lay on the floor on my meditation pillow for 5 or 10 minutes and just, turn off everything, your phone, the computer, get quiet, as long as Coco doesn't try to walk on my head or something. But even that, if I can say, okay, I'm just going to play with her in this moment and really just be present in that can feel really good and soothing. So it really is about challenging these adaptations and trying to find ways to heal. And so I've made videos around polyvagal theory, around anxiety, around hypervigilance. So if you're new here, please check those out. Also, if you're new here, please consider subscribing and joining this little growing community. And if you like this video, check out my links down below on a couple courses I created. One is called Remothered. It's about healing the inner child and the inner parent. And really my flagship course, which is about healing and dealing with the trauma of what I truly believe is trauma when you have untreated parents with some form of narcissism or combination of narcissism and borderline immaturity, whatever you want to call it. There's something about a consistent pattern in your childhood that has made your life, in your childhood, more difficult than you would have liked. And so those courses are filled with videos and meditations and affirmations and exercises and journal work and just, everything you can think of that I think will be helpful from a science and clinical perspective. So thanks for watching. I will see you soon. Please stay safe and take good care, and I will see you soon. Bye.